Hello friends, and welcome to The Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, this is an unusual video for me. I'm not going to be talking about tarot decks. I'm not going to be talking about tarot spreads. I'm going to be talking about my own understanding of spirituality, of spirit. I'm going to be talking about my understanding of all of this that we see around us, because I believe that this material stuff, this physical stuff that we experience, all emanates from a non-physical state. All of this physical matter comes from spirit, emanates from spirit. And so I'm going to explain what I see as what spirit is and how we are part of that. And this is my understanding. So if you're interested in hearing about that, in talking about that, then stay tuned for the rest of this video. If you're not interested, I welcome you to move on to another video. This is my understanding of spirit and why I believe that living an intentional life is possible. If you're still with me, thank you for coming on this journey with me. This is not a scripted or a well-organized presentation of my beliefs. It's probably going to take a while because it is going to be somewhat disorganized. However, I'm going to try to present what I believe and what I know in as organized a fashion as I can, off the cuff. So let me tell you why I'm talking about this. What authority do I have? Well, do I have authority? I'm not sure that I do. However, let me tell you how I arrived at what I'm speaking about. Yeah, I was born Roman Catholic. Many of you know that. I grew up Roman Catholic, and I still self-describe as Roman Catholic. I also studied theology. I got my master's degree in theology. My area was liturgy, but my master's is a Master of Arts in theology. And I was able to, and blessed to, be able to go to a graduate school that had a lot of diversity. My particular school within this larger graduate school, it was called the Graduate Theological Union, a union of many graduate schools of theology. And mine was Roman Catholic, but there were other Christian denominations who had their own graduate school within this union. There was a Buddhist institute, there was a Greek Orthodox institute, there was a Jewish institute. There was also I think there was a Hindu studies group as well. There was an Islam studies group as well. So while most of the schools were predominantly Christian, there were also other religions being taught. And why I say this is a blessing is not only was I able to casually meet students of other faiths wandering around on campus, we were required to take classes from other institutes, from other graduate schools. I was required to take a class from another either Christian denomination or the Buddhist school or the Eastern Orthodox school, and I took advantage of that. I took a class from the Buddhist school. I took a class from the Eastern Orthodox school. I took a class in the Episcopal school. Those were the ones I was able to fit within my program. I wanted to graduate. I wanted to get my degree in a reasonable amount of time so that I could go and get a job. It was expensive, but that was my experience. So not only did I have that, but also coming to Korea, I had the blessing of meeting someone who was interested, deeply interested in their own Buddhist faith, and had also been curious about Catholicism. Because of history here in Korea, there was a time in the 80s when the dictator government here in Korea was being resisted by mostly students, but also other people. And the students, when they went out to protest, were attacked violently by police, by the military. And a lot of those students took refuge in Catholic churches. And the Catholic priests and nuns gave sanctuary to them, protected them from being arrested or being caught by the military or the police. So particularly young people in the 80s and 90s a little bit had a love for, a respect for the Roman Catholic Church here in Korea, even if they didn't believe in the religion, because of that history, because of that sense of protection, of looking out for each other, of providing sanctuary. So one of my friends was also one of those student protesters and felt an affinity for Roman Catholicism, even though she was Buddhist. And I had an affinity for Buddhism, even though I am Roman Catholic. So we exchanged a lot of information. And we shared information. I went to Buddhist temples with her, met Buddhist monks with her, and was surprised to see other Roman Catholic nuns visiting the Buddhist temples, because typically a Roman Catholic nun would not be allowed to go into the temple of another religion. However, here, it's all cool. So my eyes opened a lot here, and my spiritual beliefs enlarged as I lived here in Korea. So that is the perspective from which I am speaking. I'm speaking from a Roman Catholic base that has been expanded through studying theology and also through interacting with Buddhism here in South Korea, and also taking a look at other faiths, doing a general survey of other religions. And this is what I have come to believe and what I've come to know. And my understanding is that before we get into more specifics, there is one most important question that needs to be answered by each one of us. That is, what is this universe? What is this physical universe? What is its base characteristic? And I have seen generally, if you were to categorize the answers, the responses to that question, I have seen generally 3 responses. And I can understand each one of them. However, I believe that one is correct. So, one of the responses, one of the general responses that I've heard is that the universe is antagonistic. It's out to get you. What do you believe? Is the universe antagonistic? Is it indifferent? Or is it friendly? That is the question we need to answer for ourselves. And I think it's from that answer that our spirituality blossoms or grows, or it's within that answer that our spirituality exists. So, again, what do you think? Is this universe antagonistic? Is it out to get you? Is it full of evil forces that are out there waiting to pounce? I understand why many people would believe that. Yeah, everyday experience shows us that lions jump on lambs and tear them to shreds. Everyday experience shows us that people attack people, often, in this world. We see nature seeming to revolt against us. Global warming, for example. Typhoons, for example. Devastating earthquakes, for example. I can see how we could believe that this is a place that we need to protect ourselves from because of all of the potential dangers, and we're gonna die. Now, we see that everything dies, so this must be an antagonistic universe. However, I do not think that is correct. Do you believe that this universe is indifferent? Or worse, more than indifferent, chaos? That there is no organizing intelligence behind the universe, that all of this is just chance? I can understand why some people would believe that. A lot of science seems to point to that. Not all science, but a lot of science seems to point to that. Chaos theory, for one. And I can understand why some people would believe that it's all the proverbial luck of the dice. Yeah? We're either lucky going into a body or unlucky. Well, people who believe in chaos might not even believe in going into our bodies. Yeah? The body is where consciousness develops, and consciousness is a biological quirk of the human body. And that's all part of this idea of everything is only mechanics that have come to be by chance, and there are millions of different possible universes, and yeah. So there are many people who believe that, and I can understand why. And there are things in science which point in that direction. Especially if you believe that there is no organizing intelligence to this universe. And that is a belief. Is there an intelligence or is there no intelligence? Both of those are beliefs. So, if you believe there is no intelligence, or there is an intelligence, but it's just indifferent, so let everything happen as it's going to happen, then I can understand believing that this universe is indifferent and or chaotic. In which case, again, we need to protect ourselves. We need to find a way to protect this very delicate thing that we call life, because things happen, earthquakes happen. The next possible choice is that this is a friendly universe, a loving universe, a universe of evolution and creation. Which do you think that I have chosen? My belief is that this is a friendly universe, that this is a loving universe, a universe of creation from a very organizing, creating consciousness, a unifying consciousness. How can I believe that? When there are things like cancer, and there are things like earthquakes, and there are things like supernovas destroying all over the place. Because I also see that that is not all there is. And I take my example from life, biological life. I believe that biological life would not exist in its evolutionary state if this were either an antagonistic universe or an indifferent universe. The way this universe continues to evolve, it evolves in cycles, sure. There is growth and there is destruction. However, the destruction is never complete. The destruction always remains, there's something that remains, and from that remainder, more grows. We see that things don't grow to less than what they were before, but more. Science shows us that this universe is ever expanding. We see that, sure, the dinosaurs became extinct, but that doesn't mean that all life became extinct. one section of life became extinct and evolved into something else. The things that are left after the dinosaurs evolved from the dinosaurs. As the old died out, the new evolved and grew and prospered. I don't think that could happen in a truly antagonistic universe. I don't think that could happen in a truly indifferent universe. And sure, we miss things that no longer exist. That's a human experience. However, the things that no longer exist don't mean that everything is stopping to exist. And someday, these human bodies will cease to exist, just as the Neanderthal bodies ceased to exist, and the Homo erectus bodies ceased to exist. But we evolved into something else, leaving behind the previous stage of evolution. And we will, I believe, certainly evolve further. This physical form is not the be-all, end-all of evolution. This is just where we've come to so far in our progression of evolution, along with the progression of evolution of everything else on this planet and everything else in this universe. And that is what teaches me, informs my understanding that this is a friendly universe, supporting life, supporting evolution, supporting expansion, supporting things as we move through cycles. And even that cycle of cutting back and growing forth, cutting back and growing forth is an evolution, an evolving cycle, a friendly cycle, a loving cycle. So that is the framework from which I explain and understand spirit and the physical world. We are in a loving, caring unity of all that exists. So who are we? Who are we? And when I'm speaking to you, who are you? Who are you? I am not speaking to your physical body. I'm speaking to the you that inhabits this body at this moment in time. And I'm speaking from this body at this moment in time. But I am not this body that is speaking. I am speaking using this tool, which is not the same body that was here a month ago, which is not the same body that was here 50 years ago. Now, this body remakes itself every moment of every day. And we can see it very clearly as we compare our 5-year-old selves to our present selves. And as we imagine our present selves compared to ourselves maybe 20 years hence, if we're lucky to be around 20 years from now. Our bodies continue to change. That is not us. Though this is our tool. So who are we? Are we the thing that suddenly woke up within this body and that's the beginning of us? I don't think so. I believe, I know that we are part of the one consciousness that is ever creating this physical universe. From the moment that we call the Big Bang, which in Hinduism might be the Om, which in Judeo-Christian traditions would be when God woke up and said, I am, and separated light and dark, for example. Now that first day of creation, which isn't a day the way humans think of days, like with a revolution around a sun, that's not what that day is. It was the first period when time began. Yeah? We have many ways of describing the beginning of this universe. Some of them are more metaphorical, some of them are more scientific, but they all point to, I think, a similar thing, that there was a conscious, well, science doesn't point to consciousness yet. However, there was a consciousness, and within that consciousness, all of this began at some time. And at that point of beginning is when time also began. There was no time before that. At the point of beginning, that Big Bang, that Om, that God doing God's work beginning, that's when time began. And because that all began within that consciousness, it all began from that consciousness. It became physical from the non-physical. And because of that, all of this physical stuff is not separate from the consciousness that is creating it. Whatever you want to call that consciousness, be that consciousness God, Brahma, Buddha mind, Buddha consciousness, Great Spirit, Divine Mother, whatever we want to call that consciousness from which all of this arises. It arises from and within that and is never able to be separate from it. It is a unity. And the physical stuff comes and goes and it changes and evolves. And consciousness also, I believe, expands as well, evolves as well. And each one of us is an indivisible emanation from that one consciousness. We were never born, and we will never die. We enter this physical world many times, in many different ways. And right now, I have entered this world in what you're seeing here. And I am making what you are seeing here every moment of every day. Just as you are making that thing that you believe you are inhabiting right now, every moment of every day. We put brackets around this physical experience, which are also our own constructs. When did this body have the birth experience? Was it the moment two cells met? A sperm cell and an egg cell, that moment that they met, was that the beginning? Well, those cells came from somewhere. I said, no, that's not when it happened. Was it when this body came out of another body? Is that the birth experience? Well, this body was all developing within another body. There's no real beginning to this body. All of the nutrients, everything that came in to build this body existed before it entered this body as well, and will continue to exist as it exits this body, or what I perceive as this body at this moment in time. And when I remove my consciousness from this body, and we call it the death experience, the other end of the parentheses, this body doesn't stop existing. It doesn't poof out of existence. It changes, it moves, it becomes other stuff. There is no real beginningness to these physical bodies either. They form and they deform and then they form again and they change. We put brackets around it. This is the beginning, this is the end. But that is our need to put things in boxes. And that's fine. That's wonderful. It gives us order to our existence. However, just because we in these physical bodies feel that we need order doesn't mean that that is the truth. That is just our subjective perception of what we're describing as our life. However, the truth is our life never had a beginning and will never have an end. We are infinite beings having a human experience at this moment. That's who I believe I am, and that's who I believe you are. That's who I see you as when I am the most open, when I'm the most allowing, and the most loving, and the most joyful, and the most well-feeling, and the most aware that I can be. That's what I see. And there are times when I slip out of that perception. There are times when I get angry. There are times when I experience anger. There are times when I experience sadness. I experience separation. A lot of times. But that is an experience. That is not the truth. So that's who I know us to be. And it's because of that that I know that intention is a thing, is possible. Intention, what is intention? Intention is I describe it as the powerful force that drives evolution, that flows in evolution. It is the consciousness that exists always before the Big Bang. Let's call it the Big Bang because a lot of people agree to that. Yeah? Before the Big Bang. And the first flowing of intention was the Big Bang. And with the Big Bang and evolution, that all moved with the current of intention. Because consciousness intended this to happen. And then we evolved individually from that consciousness, not from as in separation, but within that consciousness. And we each have our intention for the course of our existence that existed before the physical universe. Because we were all part of this oneness. And we come into these physical forms with our intention. And this powerful flow of intention is directed, each individual powerful flow of intention is directed by our choices, by our desires. The universal consciousness spirit had the desire to create and experience. And that is the reason for this physical universe, and that is the reason for each of our physical bodies. And all of the experiences that we have within these bodies. And that intention is part reaction to experiences that we have. We experience something, we say, I like that, and we want to include more of that on our current of intention. And we have an experience, we say we don't like that, and we want to choose something else. And it's that something else that we add onto the powerful current of our intention. So our individual currents of intention within the larger river of intention that is set out by the intelligence, the consciousness that I call God and other people call other things. Divine Mother, Great Spirit, Brahman, Allah. That our intention is not what we have. It's what we flow with. And we have our stream that mingles with everybody else's stream because this is a co-creative universe. We're all making this universe together every moment of every day, with every choice we make, with every experience we have, reaction to that experience, and decision, choice, movement, creation. All of that is mixed in together in the powerful current of intention. Does that make sense to you? I'm not sure if I'm explaining it sensibly, but that's how I understand us as spiritual beings co-creating in this physical universe. And it flows with intention. And sometimes we get off course. We get scared. We block ourselves down, and we have free will. We have the free will. We have the ability to choose what we want. We have the ability to resist what we want. We have the ability to try to resist what we think we don't want. And everywhere we place our attention, that is all included in our current of intention. And sometimes, because we're putting so much attention on things because we think we're resisting them, we inadvertently include them in our flow of intention, in our life experience. We include them more strongly. And there are times when we resist so much that we start to close ourselves off from the power of intention. We can never completely separate ourselves from it. But imagine yourself on a boat, on a river. The river is moving forward. When we are open and we are allowing and we're in our highest energy state, which tells us that we're open and allowing, we're feeling love, we're feeling joy, we're feeling well-being. We feel purely aware. Then we are moving, using all of the power of our intention. And then sometimes we start closing ourselves off, which is natural and that's normal and that's fine. We get angry. We experience anger. I keep saying we get angry because that is the English habit. That is the habitual explanation for our experience. We get angry, we get sad, we become irritated. However, the truth is we experience irritation, we experience anger, we experience frustration, sadness. Because we, the true we, is not becoming that. The true we is not becoming anger. We don't become angry. We experience it. And those experiences are also indications that we are shutting ourselves off from the powerful force of intention. And because of that, our boat becomes less buoyant. It starts to close up like a rock and starts to sink. But as a rock in a river will move forward a lot slower, water will continue moving that rock in the current. However, it will move much more slowly. It will move. We cannot completely separate ourselves from intention. We cannot completely, 100% resist intention. But we can slow ourselves down pretty well. With resistance, with no, with anger, with sadness, with feeling powerlessness, with feeling unworthy. And those are all levels of perhaps resistance, if we want to think of it that way. However, the powerful flow of intention is with us always, whether we're allowing it or we're not. Just as we are always one with the consciousness that is creating this universe. So that is my understanding of who we are and how intention is and how we are within it intention. And if you're thinking, but wait, there is suffering, there is pain in this universe. How could that happen in a friendly, in a loving universe? Well, first thing we have to do is separate suffering and pain, because they are not the same thing. We call them the same thing, but really they're not the same thing. Pain, let's call pain the actual physical experience. And that exists in the world because we have bodies, and when, for example, a part of our body gets chopped off, inadvertently or intentionally, we experience pain. That's part of what these bodies do. These bodies do pain. And pain can be helpful. Pain is what teaches us to keep ourselves safer within this physical universe. Yeah? We touch a hot fire, we feel pain, and we say, I'm not going to do that again. I make another choice. A choice that is better for this physical body in this physical universe, because we agreed to certain laws. We agreed to certain conditions as we came into this physical universe. We agreed to gravity. We agreed to thermodynamics. We agreed to time. We agreed to all of that as we said, okay, I'm going to come in and I'm going to experience what it is to be a physical body in this physical universe. We agreed to all those things. And so we learn about all of those things, again, in these bodies, with this brain consciousness, which develops in and from our eternal consciousness. As we have this human experience, the brain consciousness learns stuff. And some of the stuff we learn actually comes in and helps our eternal consciousness evolve. But our brain consciousness, our ego consciousness, evolves as we have experiences. And so pain actually is one of our teachers. We want to have pain. We do. We may not accept it when we're feeling the pain, but pain teaches us. Now, suffering is a different thing. Pain causes suffering. But a lot of other things cause suffering. Loss causes suffering. What we describe as loss causes suffering. Breakups cause suffering. Suffering is something we experience. And suffering can be a teacher as well. However, we are not the sufferer. We are the one experiencing suffering. And a lot of that suffering, in fact, in the purest sense, all of that suffering can be considered a choice. We have a habitual choice for suffering. And that's what Buddhism teaches us. That there is always suffering, and we can awake from that suffering. That's what enlightenment is, awaking from the suffering. Because we are not the suffering, we are not the sufferer. We are the one who experiences the suffering. And we can make another choice. We can. It takes awakening. It takes the desire to awaken from the suffering. And we learn that suffering can be beneficial for us when we're young children. Yeah? We get hurt, we cry, we show a suffering face, and we get comforted. We get good stuff from it. So, in a sense, we learn our suffering is rewarded. From the time we're babies, we express suffering and we are rewarded in some way. So we are trained to suffer in these physical bodies. We're trained to express and experience suffering. And we can learn another way. We can learn other choices. We can learn to separate ourselves from that suffering. And when it starts to arise, observe it. Perhaps welcome it. Allow it to be. And as we allow it to be, instead of resisting it, when we resist suffering, we give it more power and it grows and becomes a huge, sometimes inescapable prison. Perceptively inescapable prison. We can always escape. There is always an escape. But it can seem like an inescapable prison to us. However, if we learn to be awake, we can learn to see that suffering arise from pain, from loss, from what we think of as loss. We don't lose anything, but we think of things going away. We think of loss. We think of heartbreak. We think of disappointment and feelings of failure. All of those things that are experiences that we are creating. We can learn to observe those. And as we observe those, we can make a choice. We can learn to have that moment to make the choice. What am I going to do with this feeling, with this suffering, with this anger that's arising, with this sorrow that's arising, with this other stuff that is arising? Because we can do that, and there are people who have shown us that we can do that. We know that that stuff, that resistance, I will generally call that resistance, is a choice. And when we learn to be able to make a choice about what to do with that experience, we become more able, more capable of staying open to the powerful flow of intention. We can look at that suffering, and instead of resisting it, giving it more power, we can embrace it, accept it, and saying, I see that there is suffering here, and I welcome it. And as we welcome it, it can dissipate. Now, instead of resisting it, if we welcome it, we can watch it pass by, or pass by, or pass by, or pass by, whatever direction you want to put it in. We can allow suffering to pass us by. But there's injustice in the world. There is privilege in the world. Yes, there is. And you look at me, and I'll bet you, I'm not going to put this on you. But I know that there are people who look at me and see immense privilege. And for the most part, they are right. They are right. I came into a white body at a time when white bodies have privilege. I came into a male body at a time in which male bodies are afforded more privilege in most poor parts of the world. There are parts of the world where male bodies have less privilege than female bodies. There are. They are very few and far between, but there are places. However, the culture in which I was born in, and most cultures around the world at this time, male bodies have more privilege. Sometimes immensely more privilege. I was born in what people would call a cisgendered body. Personally, I have given up my belief in gender. I believe gender is actually not a thing. I think gender is a thing that we have socially created, and it is a prison cell that we place each other in. And I believe even being non-gendered is a prison cell, in a sense. It's a limiting space that people inhabit, because we're still considering gender. I don't think gender really exists. However, this body is what we call a male body because it has certain parts to it and creates certain hormones, more than other bodies create. So this body has privilege, yes. But there are also parts of me that have less privilege, that are not so visible. My unprivileged parts can be very well hidden. So I can live a much more privileged life than perhaps a person in a black body, or a brown body, or perhaps a yellow body in some places. And even this color thing is, who is yellow, who is white? So, but still, we describe ourselves as yellow, white, brown, Asian, whatever. And right now, I am in a white body in a Korean or self-described Asian society. And I've been here for a long time. And even though I am other, I know that I have white privilege here in an Asian society. I have more privilege than perhaps a South Asian person would have here in Korea, because their skin is darker. A Southeast Asian person, or a black person, or a Latino person. I have more privilege even here in an Asian society. Now, I have perhaps a little bit less privilege than an actual Korean, but I have more than other people because of my perceived whiteness. Yeah, there is privilege. There is injustice. There is inequality. There is. And Should that exist? No, it should not exist. However, there are two things I would invite us all to remember. One is that we are in a more, I believe, a more equal time now than we have been in a long time. I believe we are continuing to evolve towards equality. And there are some very famous people who have said that. I believe even Martin Luther King said that no, we are not equal now. We are more equal than we were 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, perhaps even 10,000 years ago. And we will evolve towards more equality, more justice. We're going to get there. But there's no destination, because as soon as we get this far, we will notice, as we notice now, but there's still farther to go. And this is unjust. This is unequal. So we'll go farther. And then when we get there, we won't be saying, oh, look, we've succeeded. No, we'll be saying, but we're still not there yet, because there is no final destination. There will never be a final destination. We will always evolve. We will perhaps someday, if we are still in these human bodies, when we evolve to something that is like an equality, we'll notice other things, perhaps other life forms, and notice that there is an inequality there, and we need to evolve. Yes, there is injustice. There is privilege. However, we all come into these bodies each time by choice, I believe. By choice. So why would we choose an unprivileged body? Why would we do that? Why would we choose a body that is going to suffer from inequality? One thing to remember is our choice is not a blameful choice. No one is less than because they are experiencing injustice. And there are people who are able to move beyond the injustice that they experience in their society. But still, the rest of the people are experiencing injustice. And so how do we match that with a loving and creative and friendly universe? Well, first thing, we remember that we are evolving. And it's better now than it was before. It's not good, it's not perfect, no. And perhaps there will never be perfection, but we're moving in a direction of evolution, of more justice. So, things are better now, one. The next thing is that these bodies that we have chosen to inhabit now are not us. We are having a human experience. Our choice of being in these bodies at these times was not a punishment. It's not the result of doing something good or something bad in a previous life. I do not believe that. I do not believe that. Our bodies are not a punishment for what has happened before. We chose to come into these bodies. Why would I choose to come into an unprivileged body? Well, because it's an experience. It's an experience. The unprivileged body is no less than a privileged body. It's a different, perhaps what we consider a more challenging experience. Perhaps it includes more pain, more opportunities for pain, more opportunities for evolution. More potential for suffering, certainly. But also very privileged bodies experience great suffering. And we shouldn't blame them for suffering, just like we shouldn't blame the one who is unprivileged in suffering. We play the blame game a lot as human beings. And my previous body, my next body, may be a very unprivileged body. And I might choose that because I want the experience of that, of working with, of perhaps evolving within that. Because there is nothing wrong with being in an unprivileged body. With perhaps more potential struggles, there is also more potential evolution. And of course, I'm speaking from a place of perceived privilege. But we have all seen people coming from unprivileged bodies in unprivileged circumstances, blossoming, living lives of love and joy. My step-grandmother, a black woman, lived a life of joy and love to a very old age. And she experienced a lot of physical pain in her last 20, 30 years. But she still lived a life of joy and love. And that radiated from her. To the point of being enviable. If being envious was something that we wanted to aspire to, which I don't think we should, she had a beautiful life from grave injustice. She was born at a time before, in the United States, before the civil rights movement. Her family came from slavery. She was not born a slave, but her family came from slavery. She experienced all of that Jim Crow. She experienced all of the suppression, the hate, and she lived a life full of joy with her family, full of love. And that is what she came to experience. To a point of beauty. We all, I believe, choose these bodies that we inhabit. And a short life is not worse than a long life. A life of 5 minutes as a baby is not worse than a life of 100 years as a black woman or a white man. We put all of these boxes around, this is what a good life is supposed to look like, and this is what a bad life is it looks like, and dying when you're 5 years old or dying when you're 5 minutes old is worse than anything else. And sure, it causes pain and it causes suffering for the families. Families of children who die experience grave suffering, certainly. That baby did not die. That baby's body is gone, but that baby did not die. Remember, we are eternal beings having a human experience. And sometimes we go into an experience that's going to be short. And then we go into an experience that's going to be longer. And that can be okay. That can be loving. Have you ever okay, I'm going to put this into a very odd framework that may seem crass or insensitive. Have you ever sat down to a meal, taken a bite and thought, I'm not going to eat any more of that? Was that an experience of, was that an experience that caused death? Was it a pleasant experience? Perhaps not. It was an experience. Did you make the choice to take the bite? It was an experience. If I died when I was 5 years old in a car accident or a sledding accident that I had, if I had died then, it would have been an experience. I would have had a very interesting first 5 years, and I go and come back in another body. Do you see how all of this flows from that first choice? Is this a friendly or loving universe? And from that choice, all of this evolves. All of this evolves. This universe evolves from that and continues to evolve. And that doesn't mean that we should not have compassion for those who are suffering around us. People who suffer, when I suffer a lot. Pain causes me to suffer. Breakups cause me to suffer. Seeing other people in pain causes me to experience suffering. You see that habit? I've got the habit too. I suffer. I keep saying I suffer. It's not I who is suffering. I am experiencing suffering. And I experience suffering a lot. And that's okay. That's okay and does not need to be punished. We want to have compassion for each other in our suffering. We want to love each other through our experiences of suffering, through our experiences of injustice, through our experiences of wrongness and co-created evil. Because evil is, I don't believe, a thing. It's not an objective thing. Evil is a subjective experience of actions. There are actions that we do not want to happen, and we call them evil actions. The creators of those actions are not objectively evil. Those people also want to have healing. We want to have compassion for the people who do things that we label as evil. I do not believe in punitive justice. I do not believe in the death sentence because, one, there is no death, but I don't believe that we have the right to end anyone's life deliberately. I don't believe that incarcerating the way we incarcerate is human or humane. I do not believe in punitive justice. I believe in therapeutic justice. Everyone who does something that hurts someone else is crying out in pain. And that is crying out in their experience of suffering. I confuse them right now. We all confuse those two. They're crying out in their experience of suffering. And that is a call for help, a call for healing. And we want to have compassion for all of us in our suffering. Those who we label as victims and those who we label as perpetrators, as evildoers. We want to have compassion for all of them in their experience. Because we want all of us to open to the powerful flow of our intention. And this is where I see spirituality flowing into this physical universe, into this physical experience of life in this physical universe. Does that make sense to you? It makes sense to me. I don't know if I'm explaining it well enough, if I'm explaining it clearly enough, if there was enough order to what I'm saying. But I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you think. And you're right. If you're thinking that, well, you have no authority to say that, you're right. I'm speaking from my understanding, from my choice. What does that choice of it being either an antagonistic universe, an indifferent, chaotic universe, or a friendly and loving universe, what does that choice of belief lead to? My choice, my belief, my knowing of this being a friendly and loving universe leads me to all of this understanding. And it all comes from that first understanding, that first knowledge of this being a loving, friendly universe within a loving and eternal consciousness that I call God, other people call other things, and from which I have emanated and I am eternally united with. So I'd love to hear what you think. How does any of this resonate with you? In the comments below. So friends, if you feel like it, hit the like button if you feel called. Subscribe if you have not subscribed to my channel yet, and hit the alarm button so you get notifications when videos are uploaded. And share this with anyone who you think might find benefit from it, from seeing someone else perhaps explaining their perception which might be in alignment or parallel to theirs. I'm not here to change anybody's mind. I'm not here to say, no, you're wrong for believing that this is an antagonistic universe. No, you're wrong for believing this is an indifferent universe. I'm not here to convince anybody of anything or change anybody's mind. I'm here to explain how I come to this time and how I believe we can live an intentional life. And from that intentional life, how I believe that perhaps tarot and cartomancy is possible. So friends, I will end this extremely long video now. And now, as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.